Good afternoon. So we are actually at the last course for today. We will be meeting again tomorrow afternoon. You should have already gotten the 24-hour notification link for your Zoom meeting. This course was originally intended, you may have seen it as the local church scouting coordinator course. That course, we have actually pulled in lots of different people to share over 22 different segments. And we're actually putting it into a single video format so that it can be shared regularly. Because the local scouting coordinator is a linchpin person. But we had some technical glitches, and I actually don't want to present that course until we've managed to refine it completely. Because it is a linchpin, it needs to be done well. And I've got Jim, Bill, Yolanda, Carolyn, Susan, Gil. They've all been helping us. Jason Nolan's helped. But we're going to finish that up. Today, we're actually going to go through some places to connect. I love this picture here because it is really true. There's a fellowship that calls to the soul. It can best be seen by firelight. So this session is Places to Connect. I'm Stephen Scheid, Director for the Center for Scouting Ministries. And a little of the history is I am a fan of spending time with children. I love campfire fellowships. I have been a charter org rep, a chaplain, a crew advisor, a fishing and fly instructor, a climbing and rappelling instructor, a range safety officer, and a leave no trace trainer. Done a lot of other stuff too. But what the reality of it is the kids don't remember their best day of gaming. They remember when you got them out somewhere. So I'm going to ask this question. What gifts do you have? What gifts do you have? I often have wondered what I have to offer. I listed some of those instructor trainings I've taken, not to brag, but to share a thought. If I don't think I have much to offer, then can I get more to offer? Can I take a training? Can I learn? Can I grow? When we started as a small troop in South Carolina, we had 4 adults who would take our group out. We moved from the old model of youth-led, where the adults did the planning, the cooking, the organizing, the cleaning up, the yelling at the kids. Well, you know what I'm talking about. All the way to the place of being a real youth-led group. That meant we made reservations, but they picked the events and activities. They picked locations. They bought and made all the meals. All the adults ate separately. They began to function independently. We sat on the edges of their group as advisors and mentors. We weren't in the middle of it anymore. There was a lot of freedom in being on the outside because I was with my group, the adults. We were enjoying it. We were there for safety, for consulting, and for resources, but we no longer had to be dependent on everything. The kids were growing on their own. I remember the first time they said they would go climbing and rappelling. We had to be honest. We had 4 adults. We didn't have anyone with the qualifications to make it happen. We didn't know where to get the materials. We didn't know who to talk to, how to keep it safe. So I decided to go and take climbing and rappelling. Because how do you make dreams happen? You provide what you can. You invest now for the future. After I got certified, I was glad that I also made friends because they had the gear, they had the skills, and they were willing to invest their time. I didn't have the gift of climbing and rappelling when we started, but I knew I could get that gift. This picture is taken in the North Carolina. We're on top of a rock called the Chimneys. If you see all the way down on the left-hand side, there's this little thing that looks like a river. That is a river. When you look all the way down, it's 1,500 feet from the top of the Chimneys to the bottom of the canyon. I'll tell you, there is nothing more amazing than watching the youth go over the edge of that cliff. You've turned their dreams into a reality. Now, this isn't about bragging about me. I'm not extraordinary. There are lots of people I could tell you, thousands of people I could tell you about. Mr. Mack, who at 75 just got done in Texas taking a hike where he went 19 miles with boys over 2 days. At 75. Or Mr. Eloy, who just actually buried his wife. And together they were partners sharing 49 years in ministry of scouting. Or Miss Robin, who's decided that she can't sleep on the dirt anymore at 76. I just got to tell you, these are the extraordinary people who just gave what they had. And isn't that the reason we're involved in this ministry? So ask yourself the questions. What gifts do I have? Now, don't ask it like Moses, who went to the mountain and said, well, God, I can't do it. I stutter, because God will call you out. Listen to those around you as well. Don't be afraid to ask somebody else. I was surprised at how many people said, when I stepped into the ministry, they said, well, Doug, we've been waiting for that. And it's like, really? How come you didn't tell me? They figured that I would know my gifts on my own. And sometimes you can't see the forest when you're stuck as a tree. So you might be surprised what other people will say. Ask them, what gifts do you think I have? The other thing you need to think about is that your gifts will change. You may start out as a younger adult, headed into scouting and able to be the person that climbs the mountain. You may not. But whatever your gifts are, you have to move to where your gifts are at. I want you to think about Baden-Powell as an example of this, using your gifts. When he started with the scouting movement, he spent time with boys as a scoutmaster on Brownsea Island. But it wasn't long before he ended up traveling the world and sharing primarily with adults. He shifted from having just one troop to having the world. And it wasn't long at a world jamboree that the boys declared that he was the chief scout of the world. He didn't seek that position as chief scout. He had his gifts and he followed his gifts as they changed. And it moved him from scoutmaster to chief scout of the world. Why God gave you gifts is not for yourself. In the parable of the 10 talents, it's very clear. When God opens up the door, he expects you to invest in others. We're given talents that includes gifts, challenges, and opportunities that nobody else has. It's our unique combination. You might call it our DNA, our God-named assets. Those God-named assets are unique to you, and they're yours to share. So there are places that you can share your gifts and connect with the church. As a local scouting coordinator, you are the linchpin. As a scouting ministry specialist, you're a connection to the General Commission. As a conference scouting committee person, you actually are working on the regional level for your church. So let's take a little bit of a look at local scouting coordinator. The local scouting coordinator is called out in the Book of Discipline. That's the book for United Methodist that tells us how we run our churches. We represent all of our partners to and with the church. I want to say that again. We represent all of our partners to and with the church. That doesn't mean that if we only have one, that we fail to recognize the others. We need to stretch to open the doors for all the ministries we have available. The scouting movement was started by a group of far-sighted leaders who had a relationship based based on a vision for youth. Relationships exist when people or groups share common beliefs and goals. They encourage each other, they support each other, and they have each other's backs. The children, youth, and young adults develop relationships with each other and with positive adult leaders. The parents develop relationships with the organization units, and the church develops relationships with the organization's leaders, members, and parents, extending its ministry into the community. Why limit the opportunities to the church to just one door? Open them all. If you have Girl Scouts, you are primed for having Boy Scouts. If you are small and resource constrained, people still have an hour a week that they can give. So become a big. Find ministry that matches your congregation's personality and help them partner with the matching. You are also a bridge builder. Sometimes walls develop between the church and youth organization simply because the organization or the church doesn't understand the other's behavior. A lack of knowledge causes gaps. A good local scouting coordinator knows the program of the church, knows the personality of the church, and knows the program of our youth partners. They help build the bridges that solve these problems. The coordinator might offer the youth in the organizations to help them with mowing the lawn or a rummage sale. The members of the church, while hosting a district, area, or regional event for the youth organization, might also pitch in with the labor for the event so that all the youth can participate in the event. The last part of the church scouting coordinator that's important is a church scouting coordinator is a translator. Believe it or not, the Methodist Church particularly has its own language, and it can be often confusing to people who aren't engaged in the Methodist Church specifically. For instance, the area of the back of the church that has its doors by which you go into the church is called a lobby or a narthex or a vestibule or a coat room. The man or woman that leads worship is typically a pastor, reverend, minister, worship leader, preacher, or occasionally father. What you need to realize is that language needs to be translated to everybody. Our youth organizations similar have their own language. A den chief shouldn't be confused with a den leader. A cub master is not a trainer of bears. A gold award, an eagle, an ambassador, senior, bigs, littles, webelos, wahelo. A translator is often needed to help keep identity issues to a minimum and explain the concepts, such as youth-led. Now, a translator is the one who says, our goal is to make an impact on the world. When he's talking to the organization, but when he's talking to the church, he's saying exactly the same thing. And he turns around and says, we are here to transform the world. It's the same thing. Language of the church or language of the organization. A scouting ministry specialist is a in the field worker. I'm going to be honest with you and give you a perspective. I'm going to apologize to any SMSs out there and let you know if you felt like you've been left behind in the last year, that's my fault. I took a steep learning curve in coming into this job. I started to wonder, if I could cover 32,000 congregations spread across 417 church districts in 52 conferences across the whole nation and out into the rest of the world. I actually got a taste of that. I had a deep concern coming the loss of the LDS relationship with Boy Scouts, that the Western jurisdiction needed some help in opening their doors. The area is so large and density can be so low. I added 4 days to my trip to the Methodist Scouters Conference last year. I visited across Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, and then went into New Mexico. I put 1,900 miles on my card. And then I realized it's close to impossible to cover the entire country. So in the last year, I shifted focus very intensely to the conference scouting coordinator committees and helping build conference scouting coordinators. But we only have 28 conferences we only have 28 conferences that have scouting coordinators. That means a good portion of our conferences don't actually have a team to rely on yet. And I realize that. So there is a need for field scouts to help. You are the eyes and ears of the Center for Scouting Ministries. What I need you to do is learn and identify where the successes and opportunities are and share them with me. I also need to let you know, I get a lot of information from a lot of people. So I'm not intending to ignore people. Sometimes it just takes a while for me to get back to things. I know I will not get to everything, but with your help, we can kind of organize and prioritize, and we can do more. You are the message senders. You carry the message from the Center of Scouting Ministries out to the field and send us back information. With intelligence, we can be more efficient and have better success. You have the opportunity to be the link for the churches and our partners in your region. Learn about each, share about each. They're not all available in every area, but that should not stop us from working with what we have. The Conference Scouting Committee is a kind of a unique place within the Methodist Church. I've talked to a lot of different other faith groups, and they don't actually have regional committees like we do. I call them regional because that's kind of what our Conference Scouting Committee is. There's the Catholic Church that has dioceses, and we have Conference Scouting Committees. That's about it. So that means we have to have the opportunity to build these teams and be together in connection. This is the team that makes the conference a mission hotspot. When you build your team, the conference scouting coordinator leads. They are the organizer, the leader, and the team builder. They call other people out and bring them on. And they bring them on in a couple different roles. Either they're specifically district scouting coordinators, which are essentially spiritual coordinators for their Methodist district. Or they bring them onto the team as a part of program support. They can be a pray coordinator, they can coordinate bishops' dinners, training events, etc. In areas where our conference scouting committees are the strongest, our program support and our ministry is most effective. There's also another place that you could serve, the National Methodist Scouting Committee. This committee is actually still, I've got a list of people I want to engage. I've got a list of different roles. COVID hasn't helped anything, but this committee actually offers direction, feedback, and support. It's a team for national events and for national outreach opportunities. We have on our committee board members that actually sit on the General Commission on the United Methodist Men's Board. That's the board that we report to. So we actually need people from the National Scouting Committee to be able to give feedback to our board about what this ministry is and how it works, what ways we can grow, what things we can do, help expand ministry and our reach into the world. We also have at-large members, specialists in each program, like Susan, who's been a 15-year Girl Scout veteran. She actually is an at-large member on our committee. But we could also need a specialist in Campfire or Big Brothers Big Sisters. We also bring people onto the committee for particular skills or particular opportunity. Our desire is to have a committee that functions well together to make things grow. So there are places in our partners that you can also serve as well. And I'm going to focus on the faith-based places. So in Girl Scouts of the USA, there is a faith coordinator. We haven't really talked about this as an organization for a while, but I can tell you that Cara Ball, the National Director of Faith-Based Connections with Girl Scouts, really wants the faith-based coordinator to come back stronger than it even was before, because it opens a door for girls to find their faith. They're not responsible for teaching doctrine. They're responsible for helping girls explore what they believe by connecting them with pray publications or with other faith emblems that they can wear. They help them to connect with My Faith, My Promise. There is also a National Interfaith Committee. I mentioned Susan sitting on our national committee, but I gotta tell you just a little bit more. Susan also sits on the National Interfaith Committee representing Methodists to the Girl Scouts of the USA. Within BSA, we have multiple different roles that are available. A troop chaplain or a unit chaplain, a religious emblems coordinator, and the National Religious Relations Committee. These are 3 different levels in which you can directly connect with youth, your unit, or with the larger community to help grow faith. When we look at serving within Big Brothers, Big Sisters, because it's a one-on-one mentorship program, supported and audited mentorship program, the easiest and best thing you can do is to simply become a big. In Campfire, there are a couple other options. You can become a club advisor, and I know in the single largest Campfire Council, which is in Los Angeles County, their CEO is a member of the Episcopal Church, and her council actually has grown so large because she has specifically targeted opening up churches to having clubs. And when she brings club advisors in, they serve in the kitchen, washing dishes and providing a meal while the kids run the club. After a little period of time of the adult leaders serving in the background, kids get to know them. They see their hearts. They see the servant leadership that's being done, from peeling potatoes to washing dishes. She set up a model that follows through with an intentional ministry. There is another opportunity that is after-school leaders. Big Brothers, Campfire, excuse me. Campfire has after-school programs, and they need places to be able to meet and people willing to lead. So coming back down to it, I want you to think of that rappelling gear that we, you need a rope, a harness, you need hardware, and you need anchors. God has given us all of these. So let me explain just a little bit. A rope is the long connection. It stretches. I want you to think like email, social media, the GCUMM website, phone calls, conferences. These are the things that bring us together from all across the country and all across the world. It's the long connection that keeps us tied together. That's the rope. Our harness is the personal gear. It's yours. It needs to be set to you. It needs to be adjusted. You need to make sure that the fit is right. Hardware is often neglected by new climbers, but hardware is really important. It's the shock point. It's your carabiners, your Super 8s, your Grigories, your ATCs, your rings. These all have specific purposes. And how you care for that hardware makes a huge difference when it comes to falls or safety. And anchor points are critical. Anchor points actually are what sets us to a solid place where we can move. Those gifts, those different types of gifts, like rope or harnesses or hardware, each represent parts of what God has given us to be able to ascend the mountain together. What we do with those gifts is how we honor God. So I'd actually encourage you to not stop yet wherever you're at in ministry and keep moving forward, because God has something special only you can accomplish. I'd like to open it up for questions. I've seen the chat scrolling by, but man, that's a lot of information.
So Stephen, is Bill, go ahead. Is
Bill
or Jim your chat guy for this one?
Say that again, Chris?
Are Bill, excuse me, are Bill or Jim your chat leader for this one, or did you?
Yes, I've been monitoring it.
Okay. Go ahead, Jim, help me out.
Yeah, there's been some questions about the role of the scouting coordinator in the local church, and a little confusion with being the COR in a Boy Scout unit and how they fit in, especially if there's several units and there are several CORs in a church.
That's a good question. If you noticed, I actually split the roles of service out between church roles specifically, and then our partner service roles. So if you're the faith coordinator for a Girl Scout troop, you're not actually fulfilling a role within the Methodist Church. You will interact with and connect with the Methodist Church, but your role is a Girl Scout role. But if you're the local scouting coordinator, your role is a Methodist role that you're interacting with your groups. The role of the local scouting coordinator, which at the next course will be opened up, and we will have a very detailed opportunity to learn how to be that linchpin role. I will tell you what, that is a perfect place to be in, because you represent all four ministries, plus pray. It's really, really important to realize there's a difference. If you're on the organizational side, you're doing just one. If you're on the church side, you're coordinating all of them. The local scouting coordinator might actually have 5 or 6 packs, troops, both Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, and Campfire Club all in one church. Their role is to coordinate with each of the groups, not just be an advocate for one.
Stephen, you might also mention that there are 2 other groups that we work with. One not nationally anymore, but that is 4-H. Some local churches still sponsor that, and Pray. The Pray program can be a program not only for the youth serving agencies, but for the local church as a VBS or a Sunday school class. And their other programs are worth looking into for the church.
This is Bill. Jim is most certainly right on that. And a quick answer for anybody who's talking about Pray, just go to praypub.org, and Jason and Deb and the team there, they've put together just about anything you'd want to know. You don't have to be a scout to take any of the God and Me, God and Country, God and Life courses. And there's an RP3, a totally separate arm. It's great for families. And they most certainly are a true partner. You'll see it later when we do our local coordinator presentation. A lot of references to what Pray is, where they've come from, and where they match up with us.
Actually, I didn't get into it in detail because tomorrow we have an opportunity to learn more about pray, and particularly pray in a COVID period of time, which is how to do pray on Zoom, which is I think a great opportunity. And so we'll actually talk a lot more about pray tomorrow. And Bill will be offering that course to us, and he's got a lot of input directly from Pray Publications specifically, as well as from other organizations.
And people and pastors and scout leaders who've put on an online presentation, so they've gone through the steps. So yeah, it's going to be good.
Stephen, this is
Yeah.
this is Gil, and the question about 4-H. There are regional areas of the country that there's a close relationship with 4-H at that level, with United Methodist churches and other churches as well, and that's an avenue of input for scouting and some other things. They ended the national relationship with the General Commission because they looked at us as a faith-based group, and the current, I don't know if it's still the current executive of that, saw that as an issue, and so she ended that relationship. We've tried to create it again, but without much success, but we haven't given up yet. So that's the story on 4-H. Locally and regionally, still a great resource, and on that level, I found them to be really interested in helping churches and helping all kinds of scouting programs.
There was a specific question asking my annual conference and my scout council barely overlap. This is true both with Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, and even Campfire. It's actually very frequent. There are over 200 Boy Scout councils, there are over 120 Girl Scout councils, and there are only 52 annual conferences. And just to be honest with you, each one of those numbers is slightly flexible. Some are combining all the time. But what that means is we certainly will not be lined up perfectly between our organizational boundaries. So when you ask the question, who do I serve? You kind of have to make a choice. I'd encourage you to serve from the church side, because actually in that way you can partner with multiple councils and you can open up the door of the ministry side of this aspect even deeper. Now, really and truly, ministry is program offered with love and care. And when you help people to focus in on that love and care aspect of it, the church starts to realize they are the body of Christ, and the body needs to move forward in love and care into the community. It can be a challenge, actually. I know in Middle Tennessee Annual Conference, Tennessee Annual Conference and Middle Tennessee Council of BSA is actually almost a perfect fit. I think they're one of about only 5 BSA councils nationwide that match up between the annual conference and the BSA conference. And there are only 4 Girl Scout councils that match up exactly with an annual conference. So you're going to be kind of split lines in terms of serving multiple groups. If you have to focus on one, focus on the biggest opportunity for growing the ministry spiritually. That may not be the largest number. If you end up only working with 4 churches in an area, but it truly becomes ministry, you're growing children spiritually as well as program-wise, and that actually makes a bigger and a deeper impact in their life than if you stretch yourself and you go to 20 churches, but the ministry doesn't really grow. We got a couple more questions. Are we really serving God and the youth we work with? The answer to that is yes. When I say church side or scouting side, that's simply about organization. The heart of everything we do is ministry. We are serving God. And in serving God, we serve youth and adults. We are reflecting God in doing that, loving your neighbor as yourself and loving God. So it's key element of what we're doing.
May I mention that local church scouting coordinator, who happens to be in a Boy Scout unit and happens to be the COR for that, is a member of the district and council committees of BSA. And as such, they should be looking for a religious relations committee or a faith relations committee within their council. Becoming a member of that can help join not only the Methodist churches together in the area, but all of the churches together, churches, synagogues, mosques, houses of worship, together in promoting the 12th point in the Scout Law.
Right, I've seen lots of chat going back and forth. There is a comment that says they don't even want disabilities awareness group in ours. Let me point out something. If we are in the church and we are, I didn't catch what everything was there, but I want you to understand that when we come as a ministry, we serve all. That's not always easy. And as a result, that means we may have to get extra training. We may seek more time and ways to connect with youth that we didn't before. Our troop in South Carolina started out as fairly small, but one of our founding youth was pretty deep in the spectrum of autism. And as we grew, because we dealt well with one child, the council said, oh, those guys do a good job. And they sent other autistic and Asperger children to our troop. And after 2 years, we had 18 adults, and we realized we were not serving as efficiently as we needed to youth with what somebody would call disabilities and I would call other abilities. So we actually took 6 out of the 18 adults and went to a 4-hour training specifically on dealing with autism and Asperger's. And the idea was to actually build a team where we could always have somebody who could take a step back and ask, how do we serve the best? There was a lot of interest in the last session on mental health first aid. Being willing to open the door to disabilities awareness, connection, and additional training, asking that question, what gifts do I not have but are needed and I might be able to gain? That actually is the multiplier effect that takes you from the one gift, the one talent that God's given you, to the 10 talents that God has really called you to spend. So at this point, I would like to encourage you to realize that we are going to have a local church scouting coordinator specific course. It actually is, I'd like to say it's pretty dense, but it's actually, it's compact. It's got a lot of information, but not just a lot of information, it's actually a very inspiring opportunity. And it will be coming. I didn't want to sidestep the good work that's been going on. So I wanted to open doors for connections. Feel free to contact me at the office. I would love to put you in touch with your conference scouting coordinator if you have one in your area. Know that the scouting ministry specialist, our communication is going to be shifting. You will be getting a monthly newsletter from us. And we're going to start consolidating the information that you get so that we can do more regional plans in how we grow the ministries of scouting ministries and community outreach. Tomorrow morning, it won't be morning. Tomorrow we'll be starting tomorrow afternoon. You should have already gotten the 24-hour notice with the Zoom link. And I am looking forward to talking to you and seeing you then.